today we wanted to learn some more about composting. Do you have some time to answer some questions?
Yep.
So, what is composting?
Composting is basically the natural breakdown of organic material.
What got you interested in composting?
The fact that I like cooking a lot and gardening got me into composting.
How do you decide what kind of composting you do?
That depends on your situation, where you live, and what you want to get out of it.
And where can one start the process?
Anywhere. In your backyard, in your apartment, anywhere.
Awesome. So what are some of the different methods of composting?
There's two types. There's anaerobic and aerobic composting.
What are the differences between aerobic and anaerobic compost?
Anaerobic composting does not require oxygen, whereas aerobic composting requires water, organic material, and oxygen.
What are the different types of aerobic compost?
Aerobic composting, there are 3 different types. There's cold, hot, and vermicomposting, which is worm composting.
What are hot and cold compost?
Hot compost means that the material breaks down and generates heat, which helps the material break down faster. And cold composting will take a bit longer and does not reach those high temperatures.
What is vermicompost?
Vermicompost is worm composting, so basically worms will, a particular type of worm will break down food over time by eating the food and then digesting it, and produces worm castings, which you can then use as fertilizer.
Whoa, that's awesome. What do you need to start composting?
You don't need too much. You need water, organic material, so like kitchen waste, stuff like that, and carbon material, which is, yeah.
Can you give examples of carbon and nitrogen sources?
So your carbon materials are going to be things like dead leaves, paper, such, and your nitrogen materials are going to be kitchen waste, greens, garden clippings, stuff like that.
What should we avoid putting in our compost?
You should avoid putting in dairy products, oil, stuff like that, meat.
Why does compost need water?
Compost needs water because of the microorganisms that work to break down material, need water to survive and function.
And what happens if I accidentally overwater my compost?
Don't worry about that. All you have to do is just mix in some drier materials. So I would mix in sawdust, paper, dried leaves, mix that in, and you should be fine.
What about, in terms of specific materials, what about coffee grounds and tea leaves?
Coffee ground and tea leaves are actually really great sources of nitrogen. So those are great for your compost, and particularly for tea leaves, if you're making chai, try and rinse off the milk product from that before you put it into your compost.
What about cheese and dairy?
Cheese and dairy I would avoid. It will cause your pile to stink. Yeah, try and avoid that.
How about cooked vegetables?
Cooked vegetables, again, if you're boiling vegetables, it should be fine, but if you're cooking it in oil and other products like that, I would avoid that.
And how about eggs?
Eggs also, if you're cooking the eggs with oil, don't put it in your compost, but if you've got eggshells and stuff like that, that's fine.
How about spices?
Spices also, if you're vermicomposting, you might not want to put in a whole lot of spices because you might kill the worms, but otherwise you can put it in your regular compost. They are just crushed herbs after all.
Awesome. How about oils and fats?
Yeah, so oils and fats we want to avoid because it takes a lot longer to break down and it will cause your pile to stink.
And how about the leftovers?
Leftovers, yep, also. So if your leftovers are cooked foods with oil and butter, avoid that.
Does it help if I shred the things that I'm putting in the compost before putting them in?
It'll definitely help it break down faster, so if you're composting in a smaller area, I would recommend that. Some people sometimes even put it in a blender and then pour it on.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool. Hey, what's all this?
So this is right here the system I've set up, which is a 2-bin system. I have this one which I had built a while ago and I just left it. It's already shrunken drastically in the time that we've been here. And then this one I'm just building right now. So it's just a piece of mesh that I've tied together in a cylinder, and I just fill it with organic waste and dead leaves.
Do I need a lot of space to compost?
You definitely don't. Right now it's just these 2 bins I have here. But if you don't, you can still do it in an apartment, on a balcony, wherever you are.
Do you need any special tools?
Definitely no special tools. All I use so far is this rake.
Nice. And how does composting work?
Composting basically will have 3 phases, particularly hot composting. So it has the warming up phase where you've put all your materials together and it'll start generating heat. As the material starts to generate a lot of heat and it's breaking down a lot, that's the hot composting phase, and then the maturation phase, which is the cool down period.
Nice. Can you explain a bit more about those pots down there and what you're gonna do with those?
Yeah, I have a system where I keep these 2 pots right outside our door so that it's just easier to bring it from the kitchen, put it in these pots. So I have 1 pot full of dead leaves, 1 that's empty. I put at the bottom some dead leaves, then I put the kitchen scraps on top, and then I would usually cover it with dead leaves again. That's just to keep bugs off and to keep it out of the kitchen from collecting flies in the house.
Cool. And you have some toilet paper rolls in there?
Yeah, you can put toilet paper roll. I mean, it's just cardboard.
Oh, nice. So, okay, what are you working on right now then? You're just gonna put them in the main pile, or?
Right, so right now I'm just gonna dump the waste that I have in the pile, and then I'm gonna just put some leaves on top.
Should I cover my compost?
For covering it, you don't need to but it really depends on where your environment. So if it rains a lot, you might want to cover it so it's not constantly getting soaked. But if it's really hot and dry, you also will want to cover it so that the moisture doesn't evaporate immediately.
Aren't there a lot of flies if you compost?
Actually, there isn't. If you look around and you can bring the camera up close, you'll see that there's not much flies or bug activity even. It doesn't even smell really around here. All I smelled was the coffee grounds from today because we drank a lot of coffee.
Nice.
And yeah.
Should one be worried if worms grow in the compost?
No, you don't have to worry. That's just natural. They come up from the ground and start breaking down your material. So it'll actually make it faster.
Cool. Can the process of composting be done in the winter?
Yes, it can definitely be done in the winter. I've seen people in Michigan, they compost under thick layers of snow and their compost is still hot.
Wow, that's crazy. Why do you have to put the leaves on top of the compost?
I do it for a couple of reasons. I do it to keep pests off and to keep bugs away.
What are some of the common problems you might come across while composting?
Definitely some bugs that you may not want, but also rodents like raccoons and possums and deer sometimes.
What can be done when the compost smells bad?
That usually just means you have too much nitrogen content in your pile, so too much kitchen scraps and wet materials. So you're just going to want to add in and mix in more carbon material, leaves, paper, anything like that.
And how do you tackle these pests?
So that's what I was doing with the leaves. I cover it in dead leaves so that it'll just deter them a little bit. Also, it'll conceal the smell of food that's in your pile, as well as covering it can help.
Okay, very cool. What is the ideal temperature range for composting?
For hot composting, it'd be 135 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 50 to 65 degrees Celsius.
And what if people don't have such a large yard for compost?
You don't have to worry about that. You can do it in an apartment or on a balcony, and you can do it in pots.
What kind of containers can be safely used for composting?
Anything that's breathable. I would recommend things that are breathable, such as clay pots that are not glazed and cloth pots.
Whoa, that's pretty neat. And how do we compost in the house?
Again, pots I would recommend, and you can also do vermicomposting. There are these things called like worm towers, and those people use to make compost in your house.
That's pretty cool. So, okay, if we look at the pots that you have, what are you going to be doing with those pots?
We collected some of the compost that was closer to the bottom. Did you already zoom in and look at the thing?
Oh yeah, so we can take a look.
You can just see in here. You can see the dead leaves on top for sure, but if you dig a little deeper, you'll see in there dark brown. It's starting to get dark brown, less able to tell what those materials were.
Mm-hmm. Can you lift it a little more? Whoa. Yeah, that really is dark brown. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so that's just basically a week actually.
Wow,
Here.
that's amazing.
So yeah, so that, and then a little bit of turning, a little bit of water. And this was completely full about a week ago, and I just had it here.
Wow. Do you need to turn the pile often?
You can turn it as much or as little as you want. I like to turn it every couple of days just to check it out. But you don't have to. The more you turn it, the faster it breaks down for sure.
How do you know when the compost is ready to use?
When you can't tell what you put in it at the beginning, you can't see those pieces anymore.
And isn't compost just soil?
Actually, no. So compost is broken down organic material. It is excellent fertilizer for your plants. But what garden soil tends to be is actually, it's mixed with other materials that will aerate the soil for you.
What's the correct way to harvest the compost?
I would either at the end of, after it looks all broken down, you can dig up the entire pile and take stuff from the bottom, or you can do it little by little. And when you turn it, you take out stuff from the bottom.
How long does it take for the waste to become compost?
For hot composting, it could be anywhere from a couple of weeks to a month. For cold composting, definitely a couple of months. And for vermicomposting, a couple of weeks.
Oh wow, that's pretty quick. Where is it okay for the compost to be used?
On your garden. You can just put it on top, and it's excellent supplement to fertilizing.
Pretty cool. What are some of the enhancements that compost adds to soil?
It's super rich in nutrients.
Do we need to fertilize plants if we added compost?
Depends on how much you produce. So if you produce a lot of compost, you probably don't need to actually supplement with fertilizer. For me, I garden a lot on my balcony, and I produce a lot less compost, so I do use both.
What do I do if I have excess compost?
If you have excess, donate it to your community garden, or donate it to the local farmers markets that you have.
Can we compost biodegradable sanitary pads?
Depends. So most of the pads that you'll see out there do describe themselves as being biodegradable, but actually only Saathi pads are the only commercially available completely compostable sanitary pads on the market.
And how do we integrate those into the compost?
You throw it in just like any of your other kitchen waste. You just mix it in, and over time it will break down.
Oh, that's awesome. Does composting cause any health issues?
People are usually concerned when throwing in used pads, and so the only thing, if bacteria develops in the used pads, that would be a situation in which you would need to have hot composting. Hot composting, because hot composting reaches a high enough temperature for a prolonged period of time to kill the harmful bacteria.
Now for some random questions from the team. What are some of the common misconceptions regarding composting?
That it's dirty and complex.
What are some of the other good resources that you recommend for composting information?
I definitely love this company called Daily Dump. If you check them out, they have a YouTube channel and a really informative website.
What is industrial composting?
Industrial composting is just large-scale composting.
And what happens in industrial compost facilities?
They basically have machines to control certain criteria and environment that makes compost. So temperature, moisture level, turning frequency, all of that.
How much does it cost to set up your own composting system?
It doesn't really cost that much. This was just a bunch of scrap material. You just find, if you are looking to do it on a budget, be creative, find things around your house that you can collect compost in, and start from there. Otherwise, you can get bins.
How much does it cost to maintain your own composting system?
Definitely doesn't cost anything to maintain, just some water and your time.
And how much time does it take each week for you to maintain your compost?
That's as little or as much time as you want to spend on it.
Cool. What's the benefit of turning it often?
It'll break down faster.
Is there any issue with composting if you have very little children and pets in your house?
No trouble there. Just make sure they're not digging through it and eating from it.
And can you compost pet waste?
No, but that's a pretty complicated issue, so that's for a future video.
Cool. Can you add manure to the compost?
Manure from animals that eat only plant material, so cows, sheep, goats, things like chickens, things like that. Their manure is actually excellent for compost.
Oh, that's really cool. Does composting break down pesticides?
Most pesticides it will break down.
Oh, nice. And what's your favorite part of composting?
Definitely just seeing it from start to finish, just seeing the original waste turn into something that I can use in my garden.
Cool. And final question, was there anything that surprised you when you started composting?
Just how easy it was. It was not complicated at all, and it's just figuring it out for yourself and your environment. What works for you.
Wow, that's so awesome. You know so much about composting, and we really want to thank you so much for your time.
Yep.
Thanks.
Cool, thanks.
Bye.
If you like this video, please like, comment and share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.